Okay, let's have an example. A 1.00 times 10 to the power of 3 kilogram elevator car carries a maximum load of 8.00 times 10 to the power of 2 kilograms. A constant frictional force of 4.00 times 10 to the power of 3 Newton retards its motion upward. What minimum power in kilowatts and in horsepower must the motor deliver to lift a fully loaded elevator car at constant speed of 3.00 meters per second? So the problem is already illustrated para mas madali na lang. So ang problem, meron daw tayong elevator car, and that elevator car has a mass of mass of the elevator of 1.00 times 10 to the power of 3 kilograms. So that's basically 1,000 kilogram. And then this elevator car can carry a maximum load of 8.00 times 10 to the power of 2 kilograms. So the mass of the load, the maximum load is 8.00 times 10 to the power of 2 kilograms. So basically that is just 800 kilograms. We are just using scientific notation to emphasize the number of significant figures, which is this time 3 significant figures. So meron tayong mass of the elevator, which is 1,000 kilogram, and mass of the load, which is 800 kilograms. So that means we can just add the two masses para meron na tayong mass of the whole, the elevator as well as the load of that elevator. So we will just add it directly para hindi tayo malilito later. So the total mass, anong gagawin ko na variable? Capital M? It's up to us. So M na lang. As long as we know that that is the total mass of the elevator, including the passengers or the load. That is 1,800, 1.80 times 10 to the power of 3 kilograms. Okay? So, tapos na tayo sa first sentence. A constant frictional force of 4.00 times 10 to the power of 3 Newton retards its motion. So meron pala tayong frictional force acting, which retards the motion upward. So since the motion is upward, that means the frictional force is directed downwards. Kasi remember, frictional force opposes motion. So the frictional force, anong kulay ng frictional force? Green pa din, no? Kasi given. So we have the frictional force. Saan ko ilagay? Dito na lang, no? Sige, dito. We have the frictional force, which is 4.00 times 10 to the power of 3 Newton. Ayan. That's the frictional force. Now, ano pa yung given natin dito? What minimum power in kilowatts and hour must the motor lift to lift the fully loaded car at a constant speed? So that means our motor car pala, our elevator is moving at a constant speed of 3.00 meters per second. Ayun. Okay, so let us identify what is being required in this problem. What minimum power? Unknown is power. Take note of that, ha? Yun ang pinaka-importante. We are going to identify what is the unknown in the problem, and that is power. So that means we need to go back to the equations of power. Ano-ano ba yung mga equations natin for power? Para alam natin kung ano yung gagamitin natin later na equations. Ano ba yung equation natin for power? Una, we have power is equal to work divided by time. Can we use this equation? No, because we do not have time in our problem, in our given, right? So we cannot use that equation. Second, we have power is equal to force times displacement over time. So again, we cannot use this equation because we do not have time in our problem. And the third equation is power is equal to force multiplied by the velocity. Okay, so yun, there is a velocity. Velocity, ayan. So ibig sabihin pala, ang magagamit natin sa problem na ito is the third equation. Bakit? Because mayroong velocity sa third equation, meron ding velocity sa problem. Okay? So ang challenge natin ngayon is to identify kung ano yung kulang dito sa ating problem. Una, power ang hinahanap, so that means okay lang na wala siya sa given. So meron na tayong velocity, check si velocity. How about force? Ayun, we do not have force in the problem. However, meron tayong frictional force. Hala, nalagay frictional force. Meron din tayong mass. Remember, mass can be converted into force. Tama? And that is what? That is the weight. So remember, mass can be converted into force. That you just convert that into weight. So ibig sabihin, we can get the force. Okay, so pwede pala natin kukunin si force. So paano natin ngayon kukunin si force? So balik tayo doon sa um, Newton's laws of motion kasi yun yung may concept ng force. Ayun, okay? So tingnan natin dito, ano ba yung mga forces acting on this object? So meron tayong tension force. So meron tayong tension force which is directed upwards. And that's the force that the motor needs to exert, tama? On the elevator. So yan yung hahanapin natin. Yun yung kailangan natin. Yan yung force dito. Yang tension na yan. Kasi dyan mag-exert si motor. And we have also the weight, which is downwards. Tama, no? We have the weight. And we also have the frictional force, which is also downwards because it retards the motion. So kapag ilalagay natin yan in just one system, one coordinate system, we have the frictional force. Actually, ito na yung free body diagram natin. So madali na lang siya i-identify. We have the weight. And then yung kailangan natin is the tension. So blue ang gagamitin ko. Yan. Bakit tension ang kailangan natin, sir? Because dyan mag-exert ng force si motor. Yan yung kailangan natin dito. Ayan. Okay? So kailangan natin si tension. So paano natin ngayon i-solve si tension? Gagamitin natin yung Newton's laws of motion. Okay? Yun lang yung gagamitin natin. Again, don't forget to don't forget yung mga previous discussions natin. So we will use summation of forces along the y, since this is along the y, must be equal to 0 Newton. Bakit 0 Newton? Constant speed. First law of motion. So what are the forces present along the y? We have tension, which is positive because it is upwards. Plus, we have the weight, which is negative because it is downwards. We have the frictional force, which is also negative because it is downwards. Must be equal to 0 Newton. So that means tension here, which is yun yung kailangan natin kasi yun yung equation dito. Tension now is just equal to the weight. Transpose lang natin dyan, so yan sa other side of the equation. That is equal to the weight plus the frictional force. Okay? So paano natin isolve ngayon si weight? That is just mass times acceleration due to gravity. Alam natin yan. Dati pa yan natin alam, no? Tama, no? Plus the frictional force. So mass, yung total mass natin, we have the 1.80 times 10 to the power of 3 kilograms multiplied by the acceleration due to gravity, which is 9.81 meters per second squared, plus, dito ko na lang ilagay ang plus ha, plus the frictional force, which is 4.00 times 10 to the power of 3 Newton. Okay, and that will give us a tension of, pila man nga tension? Tapos kay tension 1.8 times 10 to the power of 3 times 9.81 plus 4 times 10 to the power of 3. So that will give us a tension of 21,658. 658 Newton. Ayan. Okay, sir, do we need to round it off to the number of significant figures? Um, pwede rin hindi. Para sure tayo sa answer natin, hindi muna natin i-round off. Bakit, sir? Kasi hindi pa naman yan yung final answer natin. So wag muna i-round off. Remember, power yung kailangan natin. Okay? So we already have force, which is this tension. And we also have the velocity, which is 3 meters per second. So that means we can now calculate power. So power is just equal to the force multiplied by the velocity. So force is 21,658 Newton. Take note, how many significant figures lang dapat yan? Tatlo. So take note lang na tatlo yan hanggang dyan. Multiplied by the velocity, which is 3.00 meters per second. And that will give us pila times 3. That will give us 64,974. What is the unit? That is Newton. Newton sa ang isang meters per second. And what is Newton meter per second? Remember kanina? Newton meter per second is the same as watts. Tama? So we can convert that into watts. We can use watts as our unit. So power is equal to how many significant figures? We need 3 significant figures. So 64,000 7 pala, no? So round off. So 65,000 ito, no? 65,000 watts. Significancy 0. Because 7 is, so mag-round off plus 1. So 65,000 watts. So that means, yan ba yung tinatanong dito? It should be in kilowatts. Nakalimutan ko pala isulat dito, no? Kalimutan ko isulat dito. It should be in kilowatts and in horsepower. Ayun. So kilowatts dapat or horsepower. So that means we need to convert this into kilowatts or horsepower. That is not yet our final answer pala. So convert that into kilowatts. Alam natin, dali rin na i-convert the kilowatts. Eh. So that is just 65.0 kilowatts. Tama, no? Nga naman. I-divide naman yung nag 1,000. So just divide by 1,000. And you can convert that into kilowatts. Pakita na lang na ko, basig. Hahay. Pakita na lang ako tanan. So to convert into kilowatts into kilowatts. So you just divide the wattage by 1,000. So that's 65,000 watts. In 1 kilowatt, there are 1,000 watts. So just divide lang. And that will give us 65.0 kilowatts. Yan. Okay, how about in horsepower? So that is just 65,000 watts times. In one horsepower, there is remember 3 significant figures yan. 740 pila ganito? 45.7 watts. So cancel si watts. And that will give us pila man na? 65,000 divided by 745.7. That is 87.2. Convert na into 3 significant figures. Horsepower. Ayan. So that's it. That is already our final answer. So it is 65.0 kilowatts or 87.2 horsepowers. So mura siya equivalent sa 87.2 horses kanang elevator. Muna yung meaning sa horsepower. Horsepower is, it is already explained a while ago. The average power of a horse. Okay? So, ganun lang. Number one. Okay na? If you have questions, you can message me via Messenger.